Hi, my name's Ali Cain. I'm a freelance finance journalist and the host of the Buy That Business podcast. Each episode will look at everything you need to know about buying and selling businesses. Today, we've got Steve Finn from Finn Business Sales. Steve's bought and sold countless businesses over the years, so he knows everything you need to know about buying an enterprise. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, Ali, how you doing?
I'm very well. Now, today's topic is the best businesses to buy and sell. Okay, Steve, so what's the best type of business to buy or sell?
Alrighty. So I reckon I think good businesses are ones with recurring revenue. So that's where, say, a customer might sign up and they automatically pay every month or every week or every year, even depends on what that is. So if you get a business with that sort of foundation in, I reckon they're really good because it's just got good cash flow and the value of that business is always worth more as well. So things like that. And I also like Netflix, for example, we can't buy Netflix, but that's just an example of kind of what I'm talking about. So if people are looking for a business, I reckon a plus is to look for ones with recurring revenue. I also like liquid businesses. So this is going to sound a little bit different to what people are probably thinking, but liquid, what I mean by that is things where they're selling liquid. So for example, businesses that manufacture drinks or manufacture perfume or manufacture chemicals, because there's good margins in those sort of businesses because you can produce in bulk, like in big vats, and then you can, you bottle it up and you obviously sell it for a lot more. Somebody told me once that a can of beer that we buy, we might buy that can of beer, say, even at a pub for $10, but it costs the brewer less than 10 cents or 20 cents for us to actually make that can. Now, of course, they've got to distribute it and market it and deliver it and everything, but that's pretty good margin, isn't it?
So you're looking for businesses with good profit margins and recurring revenue. Are there businesses that are hard to sell in particular?
Yeah, businesses that are hard to sell are ones where they're really niche. So where not many people kind of know about them, or not many people have expertise in that field, or not many people feel that they could run that type of business. So they're the hardest ones to sell because your buyer market is so much smaller. I can think of an example. I've got a business for sale, which is a great business, which is a tool business. They own and manufacture, and they own the rights to a particular tool that gets made. For a tradesperson or the handyman market. Now, in that particular instance, it's actually a great business, a phenomenal business, but it's actually quite difficult to get that business in front of the right people who might want to buy it, because how many people are out there looking for a tool business? They're not really doing that. Not how many people know about tools and have got the capital to then buy this sort of thing. So that's an example of something that's quite niche and quite unique. There's not many people out there or companies out there who've got the ability to be able to do that. So the smaller the buyer pool, the harder it is to sell.
So even though it appears like it's got unique IP, it's just that bit harder to sell.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. So unique IP is really good, but better in a big market. So that's probably where the trade-off is. Yeah, it will sell, and it'll sell for what it's worth. It just takes a little bit longer because there's not a big ready-made lot of people that are already out there looking for something. And if you think of it like property, if you've got a really good property that's for sale in Alice Springs, it's going to take longer to sell than if it had a really good property for sale, that's in a great spot in Sydney or a great spot in Melbourne, for example. Because the pool of people around that area, there's so many more that are around there. They're comfortable with it. They can see it easily. So therefore, it's probably going to sell quicker.
Are there any red flags to watch, especially if you're buying a business?
Yes, there is. There's probably a little bit of a misconception that people who are selling a business, are going to cook the books and make it dodgy for somebody who's going to buy. But I'm sure that happens. But I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I can't even remember it happening. So it doesn't. It's probably a bit of a one of those things that's actually, people think it happens more but it doesn't really happen. So I wouldn't say so much that type of thing's a red flag, but a lot of people would think that is the first thing. It just depends a little bit on the business itself. But I'd be looking for key staff. If the staff are really important, are they are they willing to stay, or are they in a position in their lives where it makes sense that they do stay? That's one thing. And other things are around the length of, if you've got a retail type business, the length of the lease and what options you've got to renew on that lease. So that's the sort of things I would probably look for, because if you buy a business that's been going really well, been there for 15 years, and you've got 3 years left on the lease, well, that's fine. But if there's no more extensions on that are available, well, then your business can end, pretty quickly. And that's what you want, is you want it to be able to stay there so you can keep trading.
That's really good advice. What are some other considerations that people who are thinking about selling a business need to make to get it in the best shape possible?
Yeah, so I think when people are selling, probably the main things are to have it so it's what we call buyer ready or sale ready. It's the same thing. So have it ready for a buyer to find it attractive. The other thing to think of, so some small examples there are around just make sure all the financials are tidied up and presented in the right way. And often you might not even know what you should tidy up, but that's where you should talk to, somebody who's good at business sales and been in that market. They can tell you sort of how it needs to be done. Other things are around not overspending beforehand. So sometimes people will come to us and they say, "Oh, I've got my business and, say it's worth $500,000 and I've also just spent another $300,000 on a brand new fit out for the next person." Well, unfortunately, that person won't pay you $500,000 for your business plus the $300,000 that you just spent on a fit out. They're only going to pay based on really what the profit of the business is, which if that's worth $500,000, that's worth $500,000. You might get they might pay a little bit more because you've just done a fit out, but they're not going to give you the $300,000 you just spent. The bank won't probably let them, because then it's out of range on what the valuation is for the amount of profit that it makes. So don't overspend leading up to when you're selling. You best just leave that and let the new person spend that money themselves.
Is it important for a buyer to see that the business owner has taken a salary from the business?
Yeah, it is. So it depends how they might pay themselves. So they can pay themselves as a PAYG, like a wage earner on the books, plus they can also take a portion of the profit, plus they might take some director's fees. So there's 3 ways really largely that the owners can get paid. They might also do some income splitting between their spouses if the other spouse isn't working as much in the business, or maybe being overpaid for a role sometimes. Like, so you might have a business, rather than pay, say it makes $200,000 to a family, we'll call it a family of just a husband and wife. Well, rather than pay, and the husband might work in that business for, 10 hours a week, and the wife might work in that business for 50 hours a week. But rather than divide the $200,000 up proportionally, for tax purposes, they might pay themselves each $100,000. So that's sort of how it can be done. So I just look for things like that, and yeah, you want to get a business that's been paid, where the owner's been paid. You just sometimes have to look a little bit deeper to see how they've been paid, because it might have been dividends, or it might have been profit, might have been director's fees, or it might have been wages, or a combination of all.
Is there a certain length of time that you typically see that a business needs to start preparing before it's brought to market?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting because, Ali, we find, like, most people when they come to sell, they've probably been thinking about it for a while, but they don't actually do much preparation really. And I think largely it's because they don't know what to do. And we've actually done quite a bit of marketing to say, hey, we can help you get your business ready for sale. But it's surprising how many people don't really respond to it, actually. I've always thought there should be so many more people that wanted this service and are willing to sort of get this service done, but not many people do. So, yeah, people definitely should prepare. And it's not really a time frame. It's more the things that they do. A lot of things you can just get fixed in a month, but some things you need 18 months. So it just depends on the type of business. Yeah. Ideally, people come to us and say, look, I'm thinking of selling in the next couple of years. Can you have a look for me? Let me know what I need to sort of do and what you would do if you were me. And I'll do those things and get it ready. And then I promise you, when the time comes to sell, I'll get you to help me with it. And then we would do that. We're happy to do that. No problem.
So you talked then about sort of some low-hanging fruit that you can do quickly and some things that might take a bit longer. What are some things in those 2 categories?
So, like, with things that take a bit longer, it might be around how you pay. largely it's around a lot of the structure with maybe your team, so staff. So, for example, we might sit down and have a look. You might have a business that you want to sell. We might sit down and have a look at it, and sometimes it involves change, because I can have a look and say, okay, all the staff you've got here, for what your sales are and what you're doing, like I can see that, they're obviously all doing something, but really, are they all needed? Really? Like, if you had to do a restructure and cut back, like, what would you change? So that'd be one thing, because you might be able to just pull one role out of that business, which saves $100,000 in a wage, and associated costs. If you can pull $100,000 out that way, that business is probably worth at least $200,000 more when we sell it. But you need to do it, and you need to do it for a year, so that $100,000 extra hits the bottom line for that 12-month period. You can't just do it like a week out and go, oh, now we don't have that anymore, because the banks who are lending the money, they don't know or care about that. They'll say, show me the last 12 months worth of figures. They're just going to do work on that. And so is an accountant and the buyer's accountant, that sort of stuff. So that's an example of something where you need a longer term view of it. And there's a few other things like that, but that's just an example.
How critical is it if the business has a lot of debt? Would you advise the business owner to try and pay that down before selling the enterprise?
No, I don't think it matters. That's their own personal situation. So they're going to get a lump sum of money when the time comes when they sell. Most business owners are paying down as much debt as they can anyway, and they're just taking what they need to be able to run their life. So if they've got plenty of excess funds, they probably have paid down their debt, or they don't have debt. If they've got debt and they're holding debt, it's probably because they don't have the excess funds to be able to then pay it down. So their way of paying it down is when they sell it and they get a lump sum, they'll pay it off then.
What are the three most common mistakes that you see businesses make when they try to go and sell the enterprise?
The biggest probably mistake that people make is they want too much for their business compared to what it's worth in the marketplace. So that's probably the number one thing. And it's not that they're trying to be unreasonable. It's just that they might have paid that amount for it, or they feel like they've put that much into it, or they need that much to move on to the next venture, or they need that much to retire, or whatever it is. But that's the biggest thing, because to give an example, I know I can think of a business that we had for sale about 18 months ago, 2 years ago. And this particular business, it was worth the market value of it was about $300,000. Now, the owners, for their own reasons, they said, look, we want to get at least 400,000. That's sort of what we want to walk away with. So by the time they have a couple of costs and that sort of stuff, it need to sell for $30,000 more than that. So they needed to be able to get that. So we sort of said, okay, well, the challenge is that people are going to then, balk at that, because they're going to know when they're looking around at things, the market value is probably close to sort of what that 300 is. But they were quite insistent. So we said, okay, well, let's give it a try. Sometimes people will pay you more for their own reasons. The business might be around the corner or whatever. Sometimes that can happen. So we did that. We tried it. Of course, then after a little while, it's been on the market. People say, no, it's overpriced. And then what happens is, and this is one of the biggest mistakes. Now a business gets stale. So it's stale. The owner then says, oh, drop the price now, $350. And this business then dropped $350, $300. Then they're now 12 months later. And then from their point of view, then they're like, now they're over it and they just want to get out. So now they said like $250 and $200, and the business ended up selling for like around about $200,000.
Wow.
So it actually cost themselves, I reckon, more than 100 by going high, taking way too long to sell. Then they just had to drop the price right out of it, and they lost, really a lot of money they should have got. Whereas if they had just went on, swallowed it in the first place of getting on at the right price, they could have then got out then at a reasonable price and moved on. So that's some of the things that people don't that's one of the biggest mistakes. The other ones is choosing the wrong broker, because they'll choose brokers who just list things and don't actually sell them. There's a lot of business brokers out there in the marketplace who aren't great at selling. They'll just put it on the market and hope someone buys it. But you actually have to be able to sell. You actually have to be able to sell to move volume of businesses. So that's probably the second mistake. And the third one is whatever broker they might have, not giving them enough support, giving them the information they need and letting them do the marketing they need, being there for them when they've got someone who comes in and is interested in seeing the business and having a look around, that sort of stuff. Like, it's a team effort. We can't do it on our own. We need to work as a team. And sometimes some owners are great, but not all owners realise that.
Has COVID changed anything about the way you buy and sell businesses?
No, not really. Like, it's getting back to normal now. It just quietened down for probably 6 months. There was just less activity. But now it's normal. Now it's really busy. It's one thing that is changing is the banks are about to get a lot more lenient and a lot easier to be able to lend money to people when they're buying a business. So that's good. That's about to come in. The adjustment in the responsible lending laws, it was very onerous. So it was hard to get money. But nowadays, it's what's changing is the buyer. It's a lot easier for them to get money. So that's probably a bit of a response, maybe not from COVID, but it's happening at the same time.
Before we finish up for this episode, is there one piece of advice you'd like to give the audience when it comes to buying or selling a business?
Yes. What do I think of here? So I guess I'll give advice to a buyer. I've sort of spoken about people who are selling. So look, I think if you're buying, I think the way people search for a business and buy, it's really hard to look for a business and to find one that you like and is a good fit. But I reckon a lot of people sort of make the same mistakes. Look at the obvious things to buy, that type of thing. What I would say is look past it. Say to yourself, what do I want out of this business in terms of the life that you want and the amount of money you want to make? Write those things down and now go and find something that will give that to you. It doesn't matter what it is. It might be something you'd never thought that you would own ever. And normally those are the ones that are the best fit for you. So it's really about what you get out of it, not so much what it might look like. Because what it looks like doesn't matter so much. It's what you get out of it and how it impacts on your life and your lifestyle. That's the most important thing. So I like it when I meet people who have bought a business and they say, I bought this car parts manufacturing business 8 years ago, and I never even thought I would go into this. But I bought it because it had a good management team. It was well run. It was close to home. I could see I could work 4 days a week. Budget-wise, not many people were sort of looking at it, so I could afford it, and the returns were pretty good. And I didn't really know anything about car parts, but I'm kind of good at managing people. So I just thought, well, that's fine. I'll just do that and then learn about car parts later because I've got staff there who know about it anyway. And that's the kind of story that I think is the best way to find a business.
So that's all we've got time for today, but we'd love to hear from the audience. So please look at the details for the podcast to find our contact details. Thanks so much, Steve, and see you next time.